which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So before we start the normal stuff, we made a change to the agenda. I don't believe we needed to vote on that, but if somebody felt like we did, then we certainly could do that now. I didn't get any response that there was an issue. We moved the public comments to after the superintendent and the budget presentations, the first public comments. It just, for years, we've kept it right at the beginning, everybody's silent, and then has to wait to the end of the meeting, and it gets very awkward. So it seems that people are here to hear the presentations and to comment on those. If anybody has issues with that in the public, would you just email me, l.wiley@sau47.org. We can talk about it, but during the budget season, we have so much information to get through, and I think you guys are here for that kind of need. So if that's not the case, let us know. This is public comments, but we just thought this would be more efficient. So other, yes,
I
John.
think that's a great idea. Gives people a chance to then comment on something substantive.
Right.
Yeah. Great.
Directly related to it. All right. Any changes to the agenda? Cool. We do not have our student representative today. And we are ready for the superintendent's report.
Okay, I'm going to welcome everyone here today. We'll have a very brief superintendent's report because the budget presentation is not so brief. I'm excited about the public comments following it. There's a lot of conversation that I'm sure will take place after this. There's a lot of different ideas that will be presented this evening. But one thing that I learned over the weekend that I thought was important to put on record is, and I don't know if this is, I haven't been able to do the research to find out if it's true or not, but I believe it is. Representative from Ringe, John Hunt, was provided, my understanding is that he's the 2025 New Hampshire Legislature of the Year. And I saw that on the Town of Ringe Facebook page, and so I wanted to share that. I think that's anytime someone in our local region is receiving accolades like that, it's good to support and make that public. So I wanted to mention that. And so congratulations to him for his many years of service. I do not know how many years of service he's been representing us in Concord.
Since the 80s.
Since the 80s, a long time. Okay. So that being said, the only other thing that I will point out is that we had a lot of action happening here over the weekend. We had a play. I was unable to attend it, but those in attendance who are here, I know there were some, could certainly comment further about it, but my understanding is that it was well attended and that it was just a marvelous event. And so any questions or thought processes, comments?
Any comments? Okay, very cool. Thank you. All right, we have some budget presentations. And as we move forward, even though the public comments is not right now, I would ask you to take a look at the back of the agenda sheets that you guys have for process for speaking about certain financial items. So if a financial item comes up or a line item, we ask you to have it in writing and bring it to us so that we can have our finance people have some time to do the research and not be put on the spot. So that would be most likely in every instance answered in the same meeting. It's going to help us manage the meeting better if we have specific financial questions in writing. So you have print right on your seats. So, and if you need a pen, let us know. Or a pencil. Okay. What do we got first?
Well, we have this slide, SAU 47 budget discussion. And the agenda for just to kind of keep us on task here is that we'll look at a little bit of a history of the last decade to show where we've been and where we are going. Also, some areas where we faltered perhaps a little bit, but another story tonight of where we can take an alternative path. Structures that will lead into the structures for sustainability for the next 5-10 years. Default budget overview and estimated tax impact of that. And then the proposed budget considerations around SAU and technology. There'll be some conversation there. And then athletics activities, pre-K, and facilities. Now, facilities is slated for Saturday, so that is where the majority of that conversation is going to be, but there are some nods to facilities in our conversation here. And athletics and activities will also have more conversation on Saturday, as Ms. Lindstad was unable to be here tonight. But for what we're talking about here tonight, that's going to be fine. She'll have more data around that on Saturday. And then, of course, Saturday, we will be here again in the morning, 9:30, non-public, 9 o'clock, for student services, facilities, some athletics and activities, more conversation around that. And the desire, and we believe all budgetary inputs are to be done by Tuesday of this week. So overall proposed budget will be to everyone by this coming Saturday.
Sure.
So from 2015 to 2018, the school board, some who are still on the board here and others who have come along since then, and others who weren't on the board then, were still part of the strategic planning process here. We had a 3-day session with a facilitator to map out where we wanted the Jaffrey Ringe Cooperative School District to be over the next 5, 10 or more years. And so it was a forward-thinking plan that had about roughly 80, I think 80 individuals from the community from all walks of life, organizations, school. And then during the 2018 to 2024 time was the restructuring. So restructuring, we can remember the one physical restructuring effort was taking the school from the high school and the middle school and start that blend. And that took really till 2024 to really finalize. Within that, there was a lot of curriculum work. There was work on assessment. There was work on philosophy, policies, etc. All of which now are encapsulated in the statewide requirements of the new Ed 306s. So all of that work has paid off. Literally, the language in the new 306s is exactly the language we use. Matter of fact, some of our work informed some of the work that was in the Ed 306s. So the words of proficiency, competency, progressions, and so forth.
Can you explain what Ed 306 is, just as an acronym?
Minimum standards, the educational minimum standards are the Ed 306s. Yes, thank you. And so all through that time, we also follow the legislature. And so there's a lot of conversation in the legislature about public education, how to fund it, how not to fund it, what to fund, what not to fund, charter school, public school, who's required to be responsible for certain aspects of education. What about transportation? EFAs, those are education freedom accounts. You know, are there any records of what actually takes place with educator freedom accounts? All that kind of stuff is talked about. One of the items that the state has been, I think, very clear on, and we've had conversations over the last several years, is the idea of moving to a more choice environment within the state of New Hampshire. And so a lot of the work that we've done has, at least in part, been for the purpose of making certain that we were in a good position when that world came to us. And as discussed last time, the state Supreme Court has made some important decisions that would suggest that that time is here a little bit sooner than we had anticipated. Certainly not in its final form, but we do know that in the case of at least one, possibly two schools in the state of New Hampshire whose community has voted to have them be a choice school, that they received tuition students from other places, even if those other places didn't make that same choice. And so, knowing that this was likely to be the case, we set out on saying one of our paths was going to be to secure funds for new CTE programming here. We're not going to belabor that. That didn't happen. We had a lot of things lined up, including the funding from the governor's office, but that was not meant to be. And so we can, there are other avenues, there are other choices to take. Specific to CTE, there are other programs that we can send our kids to, and those are good choices as well. It's good to be able to house our own, but we can also start to look at what our strengths are in the organization and build upon those. And then, so I'm going to propose some things to think about tonight, some concepts to think about, to discuss, is to say, all right, as we work towards sustainability, and it's important that when we talk about sustainability, the towns of Rindge and Jaffrey pay too much in property taxes. But if a public school starts to have challenges keeping its students in it because of other school choice options and so forth, the towns are still going to pay for the education of the kids. They're just going to have less control over where that money goes. And as of right now, we're in the bottom quartile of spending per pupil. If you go to a school that is a choice school and they spend more money per pupil, we would end up having to shell out 80% of whatever their per pupil cost is, the way it is written currently. So 80% of our per pupil cost, it would be roughly a little bit under 16,000. So it would be a good deal for somebody else to send their children here. It would not necessarily be the best the other way around. But at the same time, also making certain that while we continue to want to build robust systems here, that we're doing so and able to bring in more revenue that will be able to offset taxes. Because until New Hampshire decides to fund it in a different way, the property tax is the choice of funding. And that will continue to increase regardless of how education is done and where it's done. It's just the way it is. And so we want to make sure that the future and even the near future is going to give us the best opportunity for our towns and for the growth of our towns and for the growth of their investments in their houses and their homes and so forth that they have built or purchased. We talked about open enrollment last time, just a little bit further. I am proposing that you consider putting on a warrant article this year, maybe 2 warrant articles. We're talking to the attorneys as to how best to do it, because there are a lot of elements to this that have to be carefully spelled out. Some would say that you can put it all in one, but just to make sure you're not messing up the meaning of a warrant article, it might need to be 2. Regardless, one issue of open enrollment. So the school board, if you were to choose, would say, hey, we're choosing to pursue this option. You develop warrant article or warrant articles. You'd have your attorney and the DRA approve what those are, just like we usually do. And then there would be some policy development defining the parameters of open enrollment. Now, I believe also in the warrant article, not just in policy, we have to address the how many learners are allowed to tuition to our schools. What schools, what grade levels, etc. It can be by number, by percentage, whatever. And then also how many are allowed to go elsewhere. My belief is that you can't do one without, accepting the whole thing. Basically, if you, for instance, want to be a school and say, I don't want our kids to go anywhere, but we don't want to receive any, that I don't think it works that way. So, but you do have the ability, and I think you have a fairly broad ability to choose those two numbers. As stated, the other parameters, grade levels, what are the successful applicant profiles, etc. And then the warrant article or articles, they would need to pass with a simple majority in March. Now, why would I suggest open enrollment? One, because I think it's an avenue that could actually very quickly bring in some revenue for us in the towns of Rindge and Jaffrey. We have a lot of things to be proud about. We have not been sitting here board meeting after board meeting saying things like, we have a great school, we have a great culture, etc. Like other places are not where we are. We know that. And so if we believe that and we're proud of that, then why not share it with others? At the elementary school, this is not inclusive of everything, but just to give a few items, if you were to have elementary schools receiving kids from other elementary schools, and Rindge would be on the border of a couple that may be interested. Culture and academics, we, while are still in the process of developing our MTSS systems, our multi-tiered systems of support for academics and for behavior and wellness, they exist, and there's a lot of work that's continuing to go on with that. STEM. A couple of years ago, we introduced STEM as a consistent part of the curriculum, pre-K through 5. And then that started at Jaffrey Grade School, and then it went over to RMS the following year. We now have a K through 8, very rigorous reading and writing program all the way through the system. And we're in the 2nd year of implementation of that. Math, that is in the works as well. We, I would say, have a stronger middle school math curriculum and process right now. Kudos actually to go out to Taylor Furtado for her growth, basically, that was shown in math achievement. She did a great job. It was noted in the notes that I read this morning from the office here. Doing a great job with the growth of 6th grade mathematics. And then the Harris Center, NHDI, New Hampshire Dance Institute, but also New Hampshire, Destination Imagination. You can have, there's 2 different NHDIs, and other types of, programming or opportunities we have in our area for learning, outdoor learning, for instance, would be great to promote within the elementary schools. And then I'll share a little bit more on some other slides for the middle school and the high school, because really when you're talking about open enrollment, you're going to see more people gravitating to the secondary school if they're interested in choice. Usually, if you have an elementary school in your town, it's the center of your community, and people love their elementary schools. And so it's very rare that I would see a huge number of individuals going from one elementary school to another elementary school, but it certainly could happen. Middle and high school is where that choice starts to arise. And then what structures do we need in order to make this happen for a sustainable process? So if we were to look at the middle school and what we were going to say, hey, this is what we have to offer. We have daily 90 minutes of ELA using the science of reading. We talked about that in the last slide. 90 minutes of math as well. We have STEM courses in robotics, design and modeling, flight and space, medical detectives. We have robust art and music offerings. A lot of our kids in the middle school actually get high school credit in a lot of these areas before they enter high school right now. They have access to world language education, again, high school courses, and then culture. We have a very specific approach to developing and including kids in activities and athletics, which is key to the culture that we have here, as well as, and it feeds into the positive school culture with low behavioral challenges. Middle school examples of clubs based upon interest. So anytime we have interest, we have a certain number of individuals that we need to have in order to start a club. But anime, chess, destination, imagination, which has expanded actually and has been in this system for a long time, but has gotten a lot larger. Flag, football, Dungeons and Dragons, Magic the Gathering, baking. Those are some examples. There are others. And then one thing that Ms. Lindstad actually was key in bringing to our school system here was, and I'll talk about this at the high school as well, is the student leadership that goes on throughout the day. So we currently have a web program. That program is 8th grade mentoring of 6th graders. And then as we go to the high school, you'll see that under positive school culture, we have a link crew, and that's a lot of juniors and seniors supporting freshmen as they enter into high school. And so they're students mentoring other students. Because it is all one school, we do consistently, and we have shown it. We don't need to revisit all the data, but shown that the positive school culture, the behavioral challenges is decreasing, and the excitement for what we have to offer increasing, including student testimonials. CTE, STEM, and career emphasis. What the Ed 306s, the minimum standards, has just put in that you need to have career development programming all the way through your system. We have had it for 4 years. We implemented that as part of our system, so we're well established for that. STEM, we continue to increase our STEM all the way through the district. That was a goal that we had as a school system, and we have continued with that. We did step back a little bit last year, reducing it a little, but we certainly didn't ruin the programming. And then we are part of Region 14 CTE programming. We do not have any CTE programming going on in this school right now, but we have many individuals going to a variety of other places. So we have, like, for instance, 14 going to construction trades over in Keene. I know that we have some individuals going to Milford, some going to Conval for other programming. We have one going to Hudson, I think, over to, what's the school has the Broncos, is the Alvern. Yeah, thank you. And so we do offer that, and that is open to learners. And if learners want to go, we send them. That is something that we need to do, but also we believe we should be doing. That, of course, costs a fair amount of money every time you send a bus, transportation, but we didn't lose programming. We just lost the opportunity to gain a lot of funding for having programming here for the next several years, but that's okay. What we do have when we talk about open enrollment, and if we were going to go into a marketing campaign for this, which I would suggest we establish that if we were to start moving forward with this, is that we do have a relatively robust advanced placement program here. So we have more AP courses than a lot of school districts our size. And we have the capacity, because we made the shifts in 2018 to 2024 here at this school, to consolidate and to utilize our staffing more efficiently and effectively. We have a lot of individuals who can continue to use their talents, their degrees, and their learning to be able to offer more. And so what I would suggest is that if we were going to become a school that was going to advertise learners coming to our location, I mean, there's a lot of reasons for that, but we can, even by next year, add several AP courses without increasing our staffing. We have individuals who exist here who are already, we are already in the works planning for this anyway. It wasn't all going to happen next year. It was, 2 years out, maybe 3 years out, but several of these, 4 to 6 of those, it's very likely that we could make sure that we could speed up some of our processes, speed up the professional development, the certification processes, and get these to be able to offer if we wanted to do that. And I think that would be something that our school would be able to offer that would be unique to the region, along with the rest of what we have to offer. In order for open enrollment to be successful and to, I would say, withstand, I think, the changes that are going to happen over the next, sorry, the next decade or so in New Hampshire. Open enrollment, this is like an early phase of this. I believe as more schools jump on this or are forced to jump on this, you're going to see different rules developed as the legislature seems to be going in a very specific direction when it comes to public education. But getting our foundation set, which the bulk of the foundation is there, but that next step of that foundation set will benefit this district ongoing. But you need stable staffing, pre-K through 12. That means you can't be having people, being hired one year, leaving the next year, attrition, having that type of world. We were there. 2015, 2016, the first 6 years. And it had been probably the decade beforehand from what my research would show, is we had anywhere between 15 and 25% of our faculty turning over every single year. And that was a lot of, and in the last 2 years, we've had very little. Even last year when we had a little, quite a bit more of a struggle in the springtime, that could have resulted in some people leaving. I mean, we did lose some individuals, but we had some retirements, but by and large, the majority stayed. So, because they believe in this community, they believe in this school, they believe in these children, and they know that they're doing great work. We need to have a guaranteed and viable curriculum that does exist at the middle high school. Actually, right now it's being cleaned up and made a little more presentable for website usage, but culture and there is more work that needs to be done at the elementary school in that area. Culture of data, and culture of innovation. We certainly have been innovating for a while, but you want that innovation to be backed up with data. And in order to do that and have it work for you, you need to have a culture of making decisions with data. And I would say that's an area of relative weakness. We can do better. It's a strength. It's stronger than it ever has been, but it's somewhere that we need to continue to improve upon. Adequate SAU support structure. We know that our SAU is depleted from a personnel standpoint. And if you were to look at school systems in the region, you would see that the comparison is, apart from maybe the business office, where the numbers are roughly similar to what other business offices, especially our size school system has, that would be there. But in most other areas, that is not the case. Reliable and safe technology, that just needs to be ongoing. Robust academic offerings, safe and wellness in the area of our culture, but also our functioning of the facilities. And then robust co-curricular offerings. That's one of the primary drivers to schools that are, if you were to, Google, even just Google, forget looking at all the, research, peer-reviewed articles and so forth as to what makes a strong school. One of those items is that strong, robust schools that perform well academically also have very inclusive and as widespread as a school can, offerings for kids to do things after school, especially nowadays where I would say the neighborhood is very different than, say, the 80s, the 90s. We grew up, I'm looking around this area, we all grew up and we were running around outside playing with our friends all the time and all hours of the day and evening. It's not the same world we're living in. This slide right here is actually, I like this because it's a tree that includes so much of this. And this is, it's fun to realize that this was part of a visioning session my first year here. My first meeting with the Rindge Memorial School staff, this was one of the pictures of that a group of teachers put in an artistic way as to what they thought the future of their school district could be like. Collaborative, community-centered, would have good technology, child-centered, good curriculum, strong, good physical spaces, creativity. And so from the timeline of this concept of being an open enrollment school, a choice school, if you want to call it that, that's another way of looking at it. It would be, all right, let's start planning. We have to talk budget. We've got to develop warrant articles. We've got to go to the deliberative session with those warrant articles. You got to pass it in March. And then very quickly after that, the marketing approach has to be unleashed. Part of that marketing approach is also a revitalization of the website that we have. We have to do that anyway because we have some ADA compliance work that needs to take place. And so we've started working on that, but that will be a good piece of it. And then strengthen the infrastructure, which we've talked about a little bit and continue to do so, and then implement and innovate going forward. It's important as we make decisions on budgets that we are not short-sighted. One of the items I talked about just a little bit ago was making sure that you didn't have a lot of turnover. We live in an area of the state where we attract teachers in particular from outside of the community. Some drive an hour, some drive 45 minutes around that, and then there are some who are more in the half-hour, 20-minute range. So decisions that we make within our budget, I would encourage us to think about the impact that they have on staff retention. Research articles in 2021 talked about rural school districts, urban school districts, suburban school districts, rural school districts. Every time you lose a teacher, it's about $9,000 to replace them. There's a lot that goes into that cost. Usually you end up getting someone more expensive, but also because you've poured a lot into that individual. And so professional development, getting back onto speed. If you have a system, you want to make sure that everyone in your system knows what they're supposed to be doing. And so there's additional information here on, what goes into costs, what goes into that number, impact on rural areas. Rural areas have significant impact because people have to travel. We are also, fortunately or unfortunately, depends on how you look at it, we're close by to Massachusetts. We do have some fortune to be able to acquire some talent from Massachusetts, but we also have to have a little bit of competition with Massachusetts, and we've tended to lose individuals there as well. And then there are broader implications for student learning. One of the stable educational systems that needs to take place, and this is any school system, this is not just ours, this is basic. You want to have a strong MTSS system, multi-tiered systems of support, where 80% of what you're doing in the core instruction, your classroom environment, is sufficient for those individuals. If we were to look at our Ames Web results, we're very close to that across the entire school system. We have a ways to go when it comes to the New Hampshire SAS, although we're performing equal to or better than many of those in the area. That's not enough. And then so we do utilize that information because the test is very different than all the other assessments that we have to be able to refine our approaches to doing education inside our schools and help our students to achieve higher. It is unlikely that you're going to be able to meet everyone's needs in the first shot. So you want to have tiered interventions that are systematic in nature. This is where we can improve upon, but we do have those systems in place for both behavior and academics. They just need to get stronger across the system. And then we do pretty well when it comes to the supports for the tier 3. A lot of those are governed by law, but not all individuals, for instance, who have identified needs, special education, fall into tier 3, and not all tier 3 learners are individuals who are identified for special education. It could be that, for instance, we have a fairly high percentage of homeschoolers in this area, and we have annually several coming back. Often, it is the case that if they've been away for a couple of years, they're behind. And so we have to give intensive supports for those individuals to be able to get back up to speed. And it doesn't mean that they have a learning disability. It just means maybe they didn't have access to curriculum. One of the items for sustainability was making sure that our facilities are working well. This is just a picture. This was something we started to do some work. We did some great work. It was around the area of HVAC. We talked about this a lot. Not going to go into it tremendously, apart from the fact that we were able to do that in a way that saved the communities a lot of money for what we were able to do, and we upgraded our systems in a great way. We utilized ESSER funds to help out with that. We did have a conversation as we walked around the buildings many years ago, and we've done this almost, annually, talking about bathroom upgrades. Every school has some lagging situations when it comes to facilities, and bathrooms are glaring. If you were to go up, this is just a picture of a design that we made, I don't know, 6-7 years ago. And it was for a new bathroom suite just like directly above us. So the high school doesn't have a lot of bathrooms. It really has one girls' bathroom, one boys' bathroom with a couple of stalls in them. And at the time of design, we wanted to provide people more privacy, and that was everyone. We believe that everyone deserves privacy. Often bathrooms, older bathrooms were constructed with a lot of visibility, we'll just say. And also at the same time, supporting the community that we live in, as we have a variety of beliefs around social situations, social contexts, and norms. We wanted to make sure that privacy was there. And also because we have, a group of individuals who come, and we need them to feel comfortable using the restroom just because, of privacy. So this was an example of taking out the girls' bathrooms, the boys' bathrooms, blowing that entire area out, and creating a situation where you still could have a boys' and a girls' side if you wanted to, but that they would be individual stalls, private stalls. This is done in a lot of locations, certainly in Europe. Kearsarge, up there has a whole professional development session with development center with these. And Keene High actually just implemented this type of model last year. That was for a different reason than why we would have been doing it. They did it for behavior purposes by and large, but nonetheless, it is a beautiful build that they were able to put into place, and this would have been nice to have had here. It wasn't the right timing for a lot of reasons. That's okay. But it's a picture of, we've tried to make plans in the past. It's been very difficult to get big projects going forward. And that might just be the case, that we're going to have some challenges getting big projects to go forward here. But we are going to have to continue to chip away at these older buildings and improve them little by little. An example of this is not for next year's budget, but is that when we talked about the track and then windows, we're getting pricing on these three classroom window areas. Let's start with that. And we do that over RMS, we do that at JGS. And then let's get a plan for replacing a certain number each year. Maybe we can't spend the entire $400,000 on replacing all of them. That would be an estimate of what it would take to do probably RMS. But we do need to have a focus and the ability to continue to move in that area. So the board, when I had asked the school board, what are you looking for the SAU when it comes to staffing? It's been very public, I've been here, this is my 11th year. And so that is a long time for a superintendent, and I'm excited to continue. That being said, we need to get things in place for a time when that is not going to be the case, and to make sure that we have the systems that are going to keep the trajectory going forward and upward. And so there were two items or two positions that were discussed. One was facilities manager or facilities director. Right now, we are going without that because of the budget from last year. So Carrie and I are sharing that role and getting some things done, but it is at the expense of some other things, which is to be expected. So that was one position that we suggested getting back in, or that the board discussed getting back in, and then also the implementation of an assistant superintendent. There has been conversation about that for a long time. Conval has a superintendent and assistant superintendent. Messina has a superintendent and assistant superintendent. Monadnock does. Keene would have several assistant superintendents and so forth, which makes sense. They're widespread. And it's not that this can't be done with just one individual, but it is getting this entire society is getting to be more challenging all the time, and the rules and regulations upon schools are getting more so as well. But if we want to be able to continue to improve and be able to potentially have learners from other places come here and get that income, you do need to have sustainable systems. So I can't in good conscience recommend putting two people back into the budget like this. I just don't think that it can, I don't think it's prudent. I do think that if we view what we do here at the school a little bit differently, it's actually completely in line with our 2018 document that the board approved, which was the strategic design. It fuses all the learning structures together into a learning system. And so if we were to look at this type of concept where you'd have an assistant superintendent of learning systems, that individual would have supervisory skills, that person would have curriculum skills, that person would have some understanding of building mates, building running skills, maybe not perfect skills in HVAC or plumbing or things like that, but someone who can make sure that they have good vendor relationships and so forth and can work with other individuals. One thing that we have learned through this process this year is that, and we've been able to get quite a bit done because we have really strong, both Carrie and I understand the finances very well. And so we're very efficient with our finances, and we also have a lot of contacts within the community around vendor relationships. So we were able to bring a lot of vendors in. And so we've been able to move a little bit faster than perhaps in some years with some of the work that we've been doing as a result. And I can honestly say that neither of us are experts with facilities. I've been part of building a new school, we've been part of all these HVAC projects, but they haven't ever been the single focus of what I've personally done. So any position like that would need administrative support work, because to really make sure you have a robust educational system, MTSSA and MTSSB, those triangles there. And there's a lot that's involved in that. We end looking at truancy and McKinney-Vento, which is homelessness. Homelessness is increasing, and that's increasingly costing a lot more money as well. And then truancy is required by law that we have a truant officer and try to make sure that we're funding both of those in a way. Putting it all into a position that has a lot of expertise, I think can be done, and I think it can be sustainable. There are other parts of this that, for instance, we got a $1.25 million grant for 5 years given to us. We had partnered really well with the Department of Education several years back, done some good work. We worked in tandem with them to get Jaffrey to be part of a federal application. We were awarded that. The beginning of this year was tough because a lot of things, federal funding was tough, but we were able to get some of it toward the end here. And we believe that we're going to have 4 more years, or about another $1,250,000 to $275,000 each year for the purpose of MTSSB. So there is some possibility of getting some of this funded through grant, through well-designed grant work. Now, that's a lot of philosophy, programming, structures, concepts that are behind the numbers that have to be considered, or that I'm asking you to consider. Now I'm going to start talking about the realities of what things cost. This is, well, I mean, this could change a little bit, but probably not much. You can see here, let's see if I can enlarge. I can't enlarge it, sorry, on this presentation, but I can read you the drivers. And so it's all right. Our current operating budget is around that $30 million mark. We know what the proposed budget was last year. We know all the conversations that went around that. We know what was cut, what was not cut, et cetera, and what was put back into place on a temporary level. The default budget would be up a total of about 1.5 or 1.4, 1.5. I'll show you some decreases in just a second. But the main drivers are the third year of the JREA CBA step increases in the area of about $491,000. Health insurance for the JREA and just JRSSA CBAs only, those are contractual obligations. And that's in the amount close to $400,000. Well, a little bit shy of that. And then the health insurance, the item that hit many school districts in the state of New Hampshire, kind of out of the blue, was that Cigna School Care deficit that its members needed to contribute to make sure that they weren't in a deficit and that they were actually getting into the positive. And so that was $585,000 for the Jaffrey Wrench Cooperative School District. We were able to pay off $139,000 of that already. As it was technically last year's expense, we were able to use some surplus that we had last year to reduce this a little bit. Nonetheless, this is required by law. We have checked it with our attorney. That is the case. And so we are not in a position right now to shell out $445,706. Is it possible that at the end of the year, if, for instance, we have some positions that go unhired as we have had in the last couple of years, that we could have a surplus like that? It is possible. I don't think it's likely, but I think it is possible. But the board would then have to decide whether it wanted to move forward and pay that, or whether it wanted to, or at least with the understanding that there would be less or no retention funds that you, for instance, for emergency purposes, what you used this year. There are some reductions as well, mostly as we added to some student services up top, and the other one, we subtract some other areas as well. They offset each other. So the change from currently where we're at, the adopted operating budget, to the default 2026-27 budget would be about a little bit under 5%. That's still half, it was 10, we had a 10% cut last time from what was the board proposed. So that's what it starts to go up a little bit. These numbers, if we had the budget from last year, these numbers would be the same. They'd be adding on to that. They're mandated by law. What does that mean in this world? Well, we know that the New Hampshire approach to funding public education is not considered to be a stellar approach. There's a lot of conversation that goes on about that. There's a lot of good articles to read, and I encourage people to get involved in their with their legislators that are going to Concord. These red numbers over here, that's adequacy aid that is lost from the previous year. Some of that is because of hold harmless monies going away, mostly in Jaffrey, more so that Jaffrey than Rindge. And then also our October 1st numbers, although we're not far off from where we were last year, our October 1st numbers were different than what the October 1st numbers were last year, where this is all estimated. Now, we can, even though that's the estimate of what we'd be getting, we could end up having more than that. It's all based upon attendance. Attendance is an item that if you look over there, it's one of the, metrics of a school that has a good culture, but it's also important for the purpose of getting adequacy money from the state. We can see that the local school rates for Jaffrey are $9.35 and for Rindge $8.36. The local school rate, if we were just to look at this default budget, the estimate would be $10.74 per thousand and $9.07 per thousand. And you can see the estimated change there, which is just found by subtracting the first column from the second column. As it pertains to the SAU, we don't have a ton of, I would say, lines that would need to change. There are some items that we are proposing. So when we look at SAU and we look at salary and benefits increases, we compared we got information from all the surrounding areas, what they were proposing, and ours falls very closely with many of them, a little bit below some nearby schools. But we are proposing a 3.75% increase for the SAU and JRAO exempt. That's the individuals who are not hourly staffed. And then we would have a 4% that we would propose for non-exempt those individuals, for instance, who work in the front office, who are administrative assistants, who are in. These are non-bargaining unit members that are in the school system. And then you can see the healthcare increases. We've been talking about healthcare a lot. We were notified by school care that our rates could go up as little, and it's not, by the way, it's not a little, but as little as 8% or as much as 35%. That was the range of the increases this year in Cigna school care. And the average was 17.5%. We did come in at 13.9%. So it was about a point to 2 points, a little bit better than what we thought. We were pretty certain that we were under the average, but we were a little bit less than what we had thought, which is good. Nonetheless, we can be excited, I suppose, about that, or happy about that, because it's not going to increase more than what it already is, but you saw what that does to a default budget already. And then if we were to entertain, I put the asterisk there, we haven't put this into the proposed budget yet. And we may put it into proposed budget so that we can have more conversation about it to see the feasibility of this. But an assistant superintendent, when you're looking at salary, benefits, healthcare, all that, everything together is going to be in that 175 to 185,000 range if you're looking at comparability to other districts. And then superintendent contracts, so you know what my contract is and what that states, and it's already spelled out in there. and then professional development, something that we lost last year. And we took out. This is really critical for keeping the summertime work, the curriculum work going. It's not a lot in the whole scheme of things. We understand that $41,000 is a lot when it comes to it is a lot of money, but when it comes to a school district and have that being the life curriculum and instruction being kind of the life force of your growth, it's important to feed that. A lot of our professional development is paid out of federal funds, so we don't put that in here. Title II-A, although those have been, we'll call it threatened in the last year or so. So you never know what's happening there, but we do have, I know for a fact, we have $75,000 in professional development funds that we have untouched that is set for next year so that we can work on math professional development as part of a multi-year plan for math implementation. Part of the SAU, really district-wide, is technology. This is a slide we look at every year. And in the years past, we have been in a position to propose a budget to the community that has already been reduced from the original expenses by pre-buying equipment and things like that. Again, we're not really in that position this year. At least right now, we certainly don't have that type of cash flow. So we talked already about the importance of continuing with our replacement cycle technology. Now, technically, there's no replacement cycle. We stop, we put it in place, we stop it, we put it in place, we stop it. So it's not in the default budget. You could put replacement cycles in the default budget if you actually have a replacement cycle and you've behaved that way. That has not been the behavior. So Chromebooks are a little more expensive than they have been. Really, they've been a great purchase over the years. They've stayed pretty flat, but they are a little more expensive, just like everything else is more expensive now. And so $70,000 to make sure that we continue the new Chromebooks for 3rd grade, 6th grade, and 9th grade. We know what took place when we didn't do that one year. We thought we could get away with it. It was disastrous on many levels, and it certainly hurt our state assessments, actually. That was, we had a lot of irregularities as a result of that year. Another item that we would see as an increase, there's not a lot of change. Even those 3 lines in the middle there, they should actually say no change to them. But I asked Mike, and he could probably talk more if you had questions later on about this, but we went away from a copier cycle years ago, probably the 3rd year that I was here, my 3rd year. And the desire was to stop these leases, stop these multi-year contracts and so forth, and buy things outright. And it did save money. It didn't save a lot of money, but it saved money, and that has been the case. But we are in a spot where a lot of those pieces of equipment are now at end of life. And so we have to consider whether we would want to purchase new ones or whether we want to get into a cycle where we are leasing them and having the maintenance package all being part of one thing and having a reliable, this is our cost every single year. We do choose to do that, and it's worked out very well with the technology for our instructors. So we're budgeting up there, and you can see this is year 4 of the laptop lease. And because it's a lease, we have kept it in, whereas we haven't purchased them outright. And so that is something we've been able to make sure that we have had a solid price that we can budget every single time. Food service, just quickly, we're flat funding food service. We recommend that. We did receive on Friday evening, I believe Friday evening, we received their budget for us. And so there were some changes with where money would be. We also, Carrie and I, now that we're working a little more heavily in facilities, have noticed that we've been repairing a lot of equipment inside these cafeterias and the kitchens. And so we've also been spending time looking at the products that we have, a lot of, dishwashers, ovens certainly, but the dishwashers and the refrigerators tend to be the biggest offenders of things that need to be fixed, items that need to be fixed. And also, especially if you have a refrigerator that goes out, that can cost money in other areas through the food loss. The next couple of slides is is food for thought. So this coming Saturday, we expect to have the proposed budget. We expect to have documents to the board so that you have all of, next week and prior to any more work, prior to the vacation there, the Thanksgiving time, to be able to look at everything. You've heard all the conversations behind the numbers. We know that this year we have roughly 1.2 million that was funded using the retention funds. You don't have really any retention funds left. You maybe have $30,000, $31,000 in retention funds remaining. And the board's chosen to keep that where it's at this point in time, just in case of an emergency that could take place. So you don't have that again, and then you have to consider the 1.5 million increase to the default budget, and that's a 5%. Now consider putting another 1.2 million on top of that. And then there are some other numbers that deal with personnel. For instance, we talked about it's not going into the default budget, but the middle school, we found that, whoops, we just ruined the balance of the entire middle school by removing one person out of that mix. It seemed like it would work numbers wise. It just hasn't. And so getting that position back in there is going to, by the way, allow for a steamroll or a domino effect of other improvements to be able to happen, including to be able to develop one or two of those AP courses with existing staff. And there, we also know that the Ed 306s, the minimum standards, tell us that we need to offer other programming that we currently don't have here in the area of business and finance. And so it's not add a course, it's not add some standards. We are positioned better than most to be able to kind of put standards in different locations, but you can't just, the word is very specific to program. And so we have to add for that. So there are other ways that we can look at funding. And also, the community made a statement last year. And I think that it's important to listen to the statements that a community makes, whether you agree with them or not. And one of those was property taxes were too high, maybe some ideological reasons for doing that. We know that there's a wide array of beliefs in the community. And so athletics is not in the default budget. Activities are not in the default budget. None of that is in the default budget. Full day 4-year-old pre-K, not in the default budget. None of it is required by law. Both of these arguably are attractors to other communities if we have robust systems, complete systems, well operated, effective systems. Also, there are some values, I guess, that we as a community need to talk about. What do we value here? What do we value and want for our kids in this community and for their, when I look at 4-year-old pre-K, I think future. And I've, the literature is easy to find about the power of early, affordable childhood education to a community's future. But it's not an immediate payoff. So there are a lot of things to balance. Do we put these on warrant articles? Do we say, community, warrant article for the budget? Warrant article for athletics and activities? Warrant article for pre-K? We know that we're likely to have a warrant article for a JRSSA multi-year contract. We're in the last year of our support staff contract. We're negotiating it right now. We have 2 more sessions on the books, and we'll continue to do that. We have facility needs. The community, whether we like it or not, has made some statements regarding a new facility, a new part of a facility, anything like that. Even with 3/4 of it paid for by the state, the community indicated that it was not interested in moving forward with that. So and we have other things that we need to work on and fix. We need windows. We need locks, things like that. They cost a lot of money. Do we consider putting on a warrant article the selling of the 202 property and putting that in a facilities trust fund? It was bought for the purpose of facilities. Maybe we can utilize that in that way. My idealistic, future-focused mind says that's not the best way to go, but I also think this is practical. And it's not it's something that could be supportive for where we are currently in the funding world that we're in. These are just references of articles talking about turnover. Because I know that one of the items that we talk about that, I follow social media pretty closely. I don't comment on it a lot, but it is what it is. And it's important to know what people think and what they say. We've had conversation here about the Little Oriole Center. Should that be gone? Should that go? We know we get revenue for the Little Oriole Center. It's not a free center. We know that we budget for the complete revenue for the center. We also know that the center has not brought in its complete revenue by itself. It has been offset 100% by other revenue that's come in higher. We know that we know very well that it serves a function of staff retention. In more ways than one, it is considered to be one of the most supportive items for our staff in general, whether you have kids or not. That has been stated. And also for the individuals, we have a lot of children in there right now. We've had a lot of faculty have children, or we were able to attract individuals as well by having that offering. I'll reiterate, we have a lot of people who travel far away from a distance, and it is a benefit. And we will continue to look at funding structures. We are proposing to have a decrease in staffing costs there. Not a huge decrease, but like, $13,000 around there, decreasing the percentage of the employee. Get some other part-time employees in there. When you have that, it reduces the benefit packages. So the cost of losing staff at any point in time, let alone when you want to continue the work that you're doing, is is a number that should be factored in to any decision made around that program. We also have learners who are here, who work in the program and also do their extended learning opportunities through that program. About 2 to 3 a year, so it's not a huge number. Usually individuals who are working at or going to take classes at Conval for careers in education, they often come over here and end up getting experience in the center. So that is the presentation, the reasoning behind the numbers, and some tough numbers.
There is a lot of information. I would like to speak quickly before opening it up to the board comments. First of all, I would like to really thank you for that more than an hour of in-depth, detailed, referenced, incredibly, well researched and rounded presentation. I would like to say thank you. It's really nice to see you back. This has been a year where we haven't seen the visionary as much. It's been pretty brutal. And it's really nice to see you back to the creative, kind of innovative, like where can we adjust? Where can we keep things moving with the strategic plan at the forefront? I mean, it's really, it's not that you went away for long. It was just, we hadn't seen this side of you for a while, and it's really nice. I'd like to, there's really a couple pieces to this. And that last piece with the warrant articles, I guess I want to give a couple of pieces of information. First of all, this full presentation is available on the website in the agenda. So all those numbers you couldn't see that were little are all there. And some of the stats didn't have, like, here's where Jaffrey is, here's where Ringe is with the taxes. We will be getting much more detailed line items as we continue the process. We are still in the introductory, exploratory phases of this. Nothing that you see tonight is set in stone. This is simply how we're starting. Okay, so just a little reminder there. Just because it says these are the warrant article ideas, please don't believe that this is what's absolutely done. There's a lot of stuff that goes into this process. With the warrant articles, I would like to just quickly speak to those, if that's okay. The board knows that when I took on this position, the first meeting as chair, the first meeting I mentioned, we have to start looking at the property on 202 as a revenue source. And we've had two. I want to be wary of anybody looking at this as some sort of a backlash to the vote. Instead, I would much rather it looked at as a property that we have owned for 20 years, had 2 votes on, and both of those votes lost for us building the school on it. And that was the reason we purchased the property. So this has happened twice. And this is great that we have this incredible 100 acres that Jaffrey and Ringe share on Lake Kentucky. But in the articles of agreement that we have, and those are on our website, those are important to look at when we became a charter back in the 70s. Any property that we own, to sell it has to go to the towns first for their first refusal. So this is not a property that we could possibly say, let's get it to a developer. We are not in charge of that. That would not be how it happened. The school district would have to take this to the voters, and then it goes to the towns for the voters. This is a long process. Okay, so I just want to put that and Mike, I think I'm saying it right, I'm not seeing shaking heads, but I just wanna, this is a scary thing to look at. This is nothing any of us want. It's a reasonable thing to look at, though. We have to do it with some good glasses on, okay? The second thing I just want to say about the other two warrant articles, that is also a very risky thing to do. We do not like to do that because once you say no, once the voters say no, no is no. It's done. I wanted to talk to Ruben about having these put on, and I'm really glad that you went into such detail with them, the athletics and the pre-K. In part because of the Ed 306 minimum standards, neither of these are in that. If we're stripping our schools, we have to look at what the state says they believe is what's necessary. The other piece is that for 30 years, I've sat in town meetings where every single fire truck, plow is put into a warrant article. A 9th police officer, a 5th police officer, everything is put into a warrant article. And we hear all the time, why doesn't the school work like that? And they use it as some sort of an anti-transparency thing. We're not a town government. We don't run the same way. We have a much bigger budget. We hire professionals to run this budget, and we watch it and audit it all the time. But in these cases, I think we're wondering, will we get the support from the towns to come and vote and say themselves, yes, we want these. Here is an opportunity to come and say, and come out and say, yes, we really do want these. What a thing if we do open enrollment. What a thing to be able to advertise and market that this is how much of a voter turnout we got because we believe these things are this important. So we have some opportunities here. They are not set in stone. I just wanted to just say those pieces, and then now I'd like to open it up to the board. Is there somebody who would like to start with comments, questions, considerations?
I have a very quick question. I have more to talk about later, but there's Ruben, I think I asked this question in the facilities, at the end of the facilities meeting, but I just want to clarify. If voters say they want us to sell the land on 202, if I was under the impression, Carrie, that if we sell the land, the money goes back to taxpayers. Ruben's indicating that that money can be set aside and put into the facilities trust. Does that depend on how the warrant article is written? That's my question.
Yeah, I think we would need to, if we were interested in that concept, we would want to go and talk to legal counsel and how it would be written. It's it may not be possible to go to a trust fund from one place to the next. It may not be. It might be that, for instance, it would be revenue that would come into, unanticipated revenue at the end, and then maybe you'd have a separate warrant article to say, if you have extra money left over, like we did last time, you fund that first, and for a certain amount, you might have to do it in a couple steps. It might be that, like you said, it might be one process, and then waiting until you know that you're going to sell it, and then putting another warrant article and say, we sold this, we got this anticipated revenue, we'd like to put that X amount of money into a facilities trust fund. So the school district would have to have the funds, or I suppose another route to take is give it back to the taxpayers and then ask them to put that same amount from taxation into the facilities trust fund as a separate article. I suppose that's similar.
So let's figure out.
It is. I don't, the most efficient way, I don't know. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, really, it's an idea that we just need to explore and see if you want to go down that path before spending money on a legal opinion.
All right. Anybody who Charlie, do you wanna speak into Ruben's report?
School choice.
Mhm.
With school choice, some districts enrollment are gonna go up and some's gonna go down. With the ones that go up, when enrollment goes up, generally cost per student goes down. When enrollment goes down, cost per student goes up. So if you're really interested in taxes, what you want to do is you want to be a magnet school district. You want to get enrollments from outside of your district because it does two things. It funds your operations, but it also reduces your cost per student. So from my perspective, I think Ruben is looking in the right direction when we start talking about how can we be a magnet and attract the students that are going to be leaving others, because I cannot see our legislature doing a lot for public education. I think we're going to be competing public education versus charter schools versus everything else. And I think that school choice is going to be in the forefront. And I think that the best way we have of coping with it is to make some initial investments. Now, if you run a business, you know, if you're going to do something, you have to invest in the infrastructure to make it happen. You can't say, oh, I'm going to go into the cement business without purchasing a cement truck. You got to buy the cement truck. So that's something we need to look at hard, is what kind of investment we need to make this happen. Towns have to be behind that, because if the towns aren't behind it and the voters don't want to support it, then they're going to get stuck with a tax bill. And it's not going to be immediate. It's going to be over time. So you're either in the forefront and you're leading the charge, or you're going to be sitting there holding the bag when everybody else has got their share of the money already. So that's my 2 cents on that. As far as the warrant articles are concerned, I think the school board decided that we needed to make some drastic cuts to reach the budget. I think that those cuts were made by the school board. The taxpayers didn't have any choice in what those cuts were. So I think that from my perspective, I would like to see the athletics and co-curriculars, and I'd like to see pre-K, as much as I love pre-K, put to the voters and say, hey, do you want to continue funding that? We did what we could as a school board. We used our unretained funds to do that, okay? And we don't have it this year. It's not there. So if it's going to be funded, the town's going to have to fund it. That's my 2 cents.
Judy?
Yeah, I agree with what Charlie said. I think it's important to give the voters the choice as to whether or not we want to keep activities and sports and pre-K for 4-year-olds. I mean, they're fantastic programs, but I also, you know, as someone who received, you know, the tax bills, you know, this month, you know, they went up 6%. Our tax bills in this region are typically over $10,000 a year. And it's a lot of money, and the schools are certainly deserving, but the way New Hampshire's tax structure is, they put in a lot of things we're required to do, but they don't fund us for them. So, you know, it puts us between a rock and a hard place, but I do think that the voters deserve to be able to vote on a warrant article and have some say directly in what happens.
John?
If it's okay, I think I'd rather just wait a little bit and hear some more.
Yep.
Else.
That's good. Christine?
Well, in terms of open enrollment, we already take, our policy allows us to accept a small number of staff children who live in a different school district to come here, and we have, for free, I guess it's really for free, but it hasn't been. We haven't charged them. And so even if nothing else, if we went to open enrollment and we said, this is our limit is we will accept staff's kids, then that in itself would be positive revenue source. I think that many students would want to come here. I would hope so. And especially if we offered all of those fantastic AP classes, I mean, that would be significant. So hopefully we can get that going. I did want to point out, I took a quick note of this SAU staff that we've cut since I've been on the school board. And I'm sorry to say that I oversaw all this, but we used to have 2 principals in this building, in these buildings. Now we have 1. We had a facilities director and a half-time employee. We no longer have a facilities director. We had 2 full-time and then a full-time and a half full-time athletic and activities directors. And now we have 1 person, and I guess we also have a trainer. So I know that people say, oh my goodness, they are talking about expanding their administration again. Oh, and we also lost a curriculum director. I think that was my first year here on the school board. So what we're talking about is actually trying to rebuild a little bit of what we've lost over the years, over the 5 years that I've been on school board. Because people can only work so hard. It takes a lot of effort to grow kids, as parents in this room know. It takes an enormous effort to steward them into the future, and these people need support. So I appreciate that sustainability model that you proposed. And I just want to point out that it does not replace all that we've lost over the years. I also am in favor of the warrant articles trying to build back the budget of what was cut and trying to get our community to support pre-K for 4-year-olds and athletics and clubs. Those are essential programs, and I believe that if we go to open enrollment and we don't have those programs, we are going to lose kids, and we will not be the magnet that Charlie's talking about. There are not many children who'd want to go to a high school that didn't have sports.
And truthfully, whether we go to open enrollment or not, those kids can go. So they can go to an open enrollment school. That's what the Plymouth legislature did. So even if we didn't, we still have to pay for students to go someplace else. Danny.
I agree pretty much with what Charlie says, that we need to be a magnet school. We need to be drawing people in to help offset the revenue. I think that the sports and the pre-K have to be a warrant article. I can't see us putting it back in the budget. I can't see us increasing our budget that much, getting it cut again and having to go through what we went through last March. We're trying to figure out what we're going to cut away with after we spend days and many, many meetings. Like, we're all day Saturday here. We have another Saturday. We spend all this time to have it cut, and then we have to try to, hey, we can't put it back in the budget. We just can't do it. And as far as we need to do some rearranging of things, like Christine said, that we've lost. That we need to kind of do some rearranging and put these things back in a different type of position, but bring them back in. I think we have to. It's just, you can only cut so much.
Chris?
Yeah, I'll probably jump around a bit. I think we hit on a lot of topics, but I'll try to be brief on all of them. And I think that, this idea of the magnet school, that's what we were talking about with the CTE Center. I think that in our meetings, that was the idea. I think one of the lessons that I definitely took away from that, and I was very involved with the process, and I know these were discussions at the time, right? We wanted to be this magnet school and we had this great project, right? It's going to be 75% funded. We recognized that it was a big risk in doing that and proposing the project we proposed. And we had those discussions, like, do we want to, how many programs, you know, knowing that the risk, and what was realized was we went, you know, for what we thought was a good project. It was too big a scope for the community, and we ended up losing what we had, which I guess was, you know, one of my fears going in. Maybe if we just went with construction trades, I'm not questioning our decision. It's just the reality of what happened is that we went in with a bigger plan, and now we have kind of nothing here. So I guess that's what I'm thinking right now is I fully in support of this. I just think we want to be careful about, you know, when we're proposing this, how big we go and making sure it's palatable for the community, right? This process, once we see the numbers, maybe it's not all this year, maybe it's a multi-year process where we get here. And I think that's something that we need to consider. And to me, a lesson learned from CTE is that it may need to be, you know, a few years before we get this back. Because really my number one concern, I think it's going to be a real big challenge here, is just to get back to where we are today, right? I think getting there, to me, if you were to ask me at the beginning of this budget season, what's the minimum that we need to do and what would be a good result, is getting back to just where we are today. And I think maybe we can do some other things that could set it forward, but that's going to be difficult when we look at these costs. And I'll just hit on a couple other things. Open enrollment, I've learned a lot about it in the last few weeks, and I think it may just become law anyway. Likely, right? We see it's been talked about for a few years. Usually once these things are talked about for a few years, I think last year it was rejected mainly due to uncertainty around the funding. I don't think they're necessarily going to clear all that up. I think the funding, much like all the other choice initiatives that they've done, is probably going to be a bit of disaster for public schools. Maybe intentional. It's going to be difficult. That being said, if we adopt this, it allows us to control our own destiny. Either way, I think it's a smart thing to do, whether we want it to be an open enrollment magnet school or not. I think we should go to adopt this. I think it allows us to set our own policies and then decide from there. So I definitely support that. Yeah, the school care funding, you know, seeing that 445K in our default budget, that's like a third of the increase, right? So when you're looking at the, you know, our default increase of the 1.5 million, a third of it is that school care unintended, you know, unanticipated charge. I know, Lisa, you talked about it last time. I'd still very much be in support of, you know, pushing back against that. If there are still efforts going on, I think we should take part in that. And I just look at it, you know, even if there's a small compromise there, let's say, I look at it, there was basically 2 years of costs there. Maybe we can pay it back over the course of 2 years. I don't know. But I think that's still something to look at. It's a big thing for a one-time hit. And I agree with Ruben. We may have the money at the end of the year. But I don't think we can count on that right now for budgeting purposes. And then if we don't have it and we need to pay it, you know, our health insurance is at risk. Yeah, you talked about the facilities projects, Ruben, and just brought up that bathrooms. I think I was on those committees 6 or 7 years ago.
Yeah.
We talked about bathrooms, I think was our number one conclusion. We talked about a theater. We talked about gyms. We talked about fields. We've done none of it. I don't know. I don't know how to address that, but these are things that we should keep thinking about. This just hasn't come to fruition, mainly because of cost, right? If we start looking at what it costs to run a school district, it's 70. None of this is like when we start looking at these budget increases. If you look at it in a simple way, I think its staffing is 75
to 80.
to 80% of our costs, right? We're looking at enrollment that is not going to change our staffing that much. We're looking at contracts that have 4% increases, maybe a little bit more. Lo and behold, what happens when you do the budget? It goes up by 4-point-something%, right? None of the surprise. So, and that's just to stay where you are. So anything new is a lot of money, and these facilities things, I think, are going to require some creativity to fund. And probably through the use of capital reserve funds. I just don't see us doing that in our budgets. getting to that, the Route 202 property, I know 2 years ago, I think that was proposed and I was very much against it. We had many kind of conversations in process at that time. It was still being considered as a location for a CTE center, maybe a combination with a community center. We were talking about possible revenue from solar. None of that's come to fruition. And as much as I hate to say it, I think the likelihood of us ever doing anything with that property is pretty limited or zero in the short term. So I don't necessarily like the idea of giving up that 93 acres or whatever. I looked up the assessment value. I know people don't necessarily agree with the new assessed values. And that may not translate to real estate, but it says it's worth 857K.
What's that number?
857K. I looked it up. So it said there were 45 acres in Ringe worth 333,800 and 48 acres in Jaffrey worth valued at, I don't know what the correct terminology is, right? 524,100. So that's 857,900. It says it was purchased in 1989, so it's probably held on to it long enough. Yeah, I think we can get to that probably in the question and answer.
Yeah.
Anyway, so yeah, I think it's something we should consider. If it's a way that we can take that money and support our current schools, which are fiscally challenged, then I don't like it either. I think but I also don't see a practical use for it in the near term. What else did we cover?
Warrant articles.
Yeah, the warrant articles. I've thought a lot about that, and I don't know. I'd say I'm not like fully decided on it. I do believe that, you know, especially after this last experience, that as much as activities and athletics aren't required as part of Ed 306, I'm aware of that. Every school has them. Every single person here that went to a high school had a school with activities and athletics. I get the situation that we're in, and I'm not saying I don't support the warrant article approach, but part of me has a hard time leaving activities and athletics out of a proposed budget, because I think at my heart, I believe it should be in there, and I would recommend any warrant article. However, I'm still struggling with that piece of it. And I think at my core, I believe that activities and athletics, it's accepted that they're going to be part of the school experience in your budget. And I know we're here, so I'd say I'm still not sure about that one. Preschool, I guess I feel a little bit, not that it's less important, but I'd be more comfortable with that as a warrant article. Because it is something that, you know, not everybody has. I think it's great that we have it. I would recommend it. Likely, if it was a warrant article, but I see it in a little bit different light than activities and athletics, which I don't know. I think I'd have a hard time putting my name on a recommended budget that didn't include activities and athletics, but we'll see. Comes to that. I take a lot of notes when else didn't I talk about open enrollment, facilities, school care, Route 202. Little Orioles Center. I know that, right? These are the same conversations that we had last year. We haven't necessarily resolved them. I think when we initiated that, the idea was that it could get, you know, as close to self-sustaining as possible. And I think it's important that we really look at the numbers. We look at the costs. I was encouraged to hear that Ruben say they were looking at ways to bring down the costs. You know, you take that number of the cost to replace a teacher, right? That $9,000, that's real and significant if we lose teachers. So we need to consider that. And, you know, also, you know, options to maybe even raise, if it's possible, if it makes it more palatable to the community and the board, you know, we have the option to raise the cost of it. I think it's a great thing that we're doing. I heard, you know, Kelly Ayotte at a conference saying, you know, we have a crisis in New Hampshire for childcare, and nobody's really doing anything about it. Right? There has been forever. It's always been expensive. Nobody's doing anything about it. I think we should be proud that we are doing something about it. I think we're at the forefront of that. I do think it's cost effective. But if to keep it, we need to make some compromises, lower our costs, raise our revenue. I think that we should put that on the table.
And Joseph?
Many more meetings to come.
Ready?
So, I think these are great discussions. I'm not sure really about any of them. Some more than others, but I think I need more information. I need to hear from more people. When it comes to school choice, I note that there is discussion now that the school district who chooses school choice can determine how many people they would allow to come and how many they would allow to leave to go out to other schools. Now, I don't know how that second part would work, but I understand that I think it was Claremont that lost a decision, the Supreme Court about, or was it Franklin? Oh, I forget. There was a Supreme Court decision
Right. It was
handed
Plymouth.
down the last couple of
Yes,
weeks.
it was Plymouth. Plymouth?
Plymouth.
Pittsfield.
Pittsfield?
Pittsfield.
So,
There's a piece.
so the comment made was that the school that didn't want to pay to have its students go to another district could have set a limit on how many students could go out. I don't know if that's actually something that the courts have fully decided, but I think we should look into that because that's a possibility. And if it's going to be part of the law, we should be aware of that too. I say that in part because we're a school, we'd like to be a magnet school, but we don't have any career and technical education program at all. There was some talk about when we were discussing the construction of a new building here, we were talking about how there were 8 different courses that our students could access, whereas other schools had as many as 20. But that always seemed to me like an inaccurate number because to capture 7 of those 8, our students had to go to Conval. And that's a 20-minute ride plus the time it takes to get on the bus and get back on the bus and get here. So I think we're, thinking about being a magnet school, but we don't have new facilities. And if we have no CTE program at all, I'm not sure how that will work. And along with that, I really am concerned about the idea of advanced placement courses. I'm very much in support of them. I think they've been a real strength of our school. However, if we start to get staff turnover and lose some of our top teachers, I'm not sure how much of an advanced placement magnet we can be. We need to give some thought to that.
Mhm.
The discussion on the cost of losing teachers is huge, and I think we just need to really give some thought to that. Because, of course, the time it takes to advertise and to interview, you need to have your top people interviewing people that you hope to bring in. That's very expensive, but the real expense is the loss of master teachers and the need to replace them with less experienced teachers who may in some cases take 3, 4, 5 years to really get up to the top of their teaching abilities. So that's a real loss, and we've been very fortunate not to suffer that loss this past year, or this current year, I should say. After we had what amounts to about a $20 million loss last March. $3 million cut from our budget and close to a $17 million grant that we turned away. So we know we lost, or believe we lost our construction trades teacher as a result of that. And for now, it looks like we may have lost that program permanently. The New Ipswich School District is in discussions with us because they want to take that now as their program, construction trades. So when that happened, a lot of us thought we were going to lose teachers who would say, well, you know, this district is not really supportive. And we didn't. And that's a tribute to our administrators and also to the spirit of the school and our kids. We've got kids that are very well respected. I've heard it for 20 years. Our kids go to someplace, to a museum or to a show, and people say, wow, you've got great kids. Those Jaffrey Ringe kids, you know? So get past that. Yeah, I think it would be great to become a magnet school, but I hope we can do it. And if we can hold on to most of our teachers, that would help. As far as the warrant for athletics goes, yeah, I'd be in support of that because I don't think that the community would, for a second, not support athletics. And I hear what Chris says, and you know the trouble he would have supporting a budget like that. But from my own perspective, and again, I may change my mind as we continue these discussions, and I have more chance to think about this. But I'd rather see pre-K be in the budget and athletics be a warrant article, because I believe people will support athletics. I'm not so sure about pre-K. And I guess I just want to say one more thing about about our staffing. Ruben mentioned that the business office is pretty strong, but you know, we don't have a facilities director. We have one principal in the two schools now in the Conant Middle High School. We lost our curriculum director. We didn't feel we needed that. That was a number of years ago. Lost a communications director position 3 years ago, I think it is. Facilities director position. And I think that the people who have stepped up to fill in those roles have done very well. But it creates a lot of stress. And mostly when people take on new roles and responsibilities, they leave behind something that they were previously doing. Right? Maybe they just leave it behind temporarily, right? But you can't do two things at once. You can't do 60 hours of work in 40 hours, et cetera. And I think I heard Ruben say that one place we're strong is our business office. And I think that we need to continue that. There was a grant that we received last year. We thought we might lose it in the federal budget cuts, but we didn't. And that was for MTSSB, multi-tiered systems of support. And Ruben showed us a little diagram there of how that all works. I think for most of us, MTSSB is kind of a mystery. Not for the educators, they understand it, but the thing is that it responds to the needs of kids who have challenges for whatever reason. Maybe they don't learn the same way everybody else learns. Maybe they've got learning disabilities. Maybe they've got problems at home. And our district has done very well in responding to those kids. We have the intensive learning centers that try to do something similar with our special needs students. And one of the ways we've responded is by a robust grant program. And for those of you who have ever been in the world of trying to get grant money, it's not easy. it takes a lot of work. And you can apply and not get the money because you didn't cross a T or dot an I, or you didn't do the research they wanted you to do. Our business office has done a great job. And our administrators. And that's why that MTSSP program, Ruben, how much did you say we got from that program?
The award was a 5-year, 1.125 million.
Okay, so $1.25 million extra money that our administration pulled in to help kids learn. $1.25 million is a lot of money, and it's not that untypical. We've applied for lots of other grants over the years. Less over the last 10 years that I know about. And we've often gotten grants, even though only 6 grants were given out in the whole state, and wouldn't get one of them. Right, and so that's a tribute to our business office, but wherever you lose people, whether it's in communications, in curriculum, in facilities, anywhere, yeah, you may survive, but it doesn't mean you're gonna do the same kind of job, so. I'll stop there and just say there's a lot to think about, and we're gonna try and keep thinking.
For my part, I just had a couple of things. Thank you for bringing up the grant again, for that 1 point something million. We received after the federal funding, shut down this summer. We ended up receiving a small portion of that, but it had to be used by December, if I'm not mistaken. Were we ever able to?
We have budgeted, and we're set to use, about 150,000 of it. It's pretty hard to use it for the purpose that it specifically was written for. But we've been using it very well, actually, and getting a lot done, which has been great. And one of the benefits to the community was we had Lynn Lyons come here and present for a couple of hours in this building and to talk about anxiety and mental health and so forth. And she was just very enjoyable. It's great to be able to bring in national authors and national speakers, people who are reputable in their fields to these areas. Yeah, it's been great.
Good.
But we've been able to work on some systems internally, so it's been good.
Open enrollment. My understanding, and I have not done a massive amount of research on this, but at the School Board Association convention, assembly, whatever, they talked a lot about open enrollment, and my understanding that wasn't that schools had a choice, or maybe legislation's coming where they don't really have a choice, that the only real choice they have is in their policies on classroom sizes, and that drives capacity. So I'm not sure that we get to say how many we can take and how many we want to send or limit that. Or maybe it's that there's legislation in the works to make it so that we can't, like, because it said there's very seldom is the legislation actually gonna really support us. But we do have capacities in our classroom sizes, and I just wanted to put it out there that we do have a policy meeting coming up in early December on the 4th. And that was one of I know we're talking about the fall policy review, but I do want to make sure we're taking a look at classroom sizes and our policy around that. And so if there's input that needs to happen with that, we should definitely be taking a look at that, not just for open enrollment, but as we're looking at the budget, that's something we want to have eyes on, see if that needs any work. Back to the AP. Do you know how many students are currently taking AP?
I don't have those numbers right now.
Okay.
No.
All right. And I just wanted to put in a quick word that we were talking about that 2018 to 2024-22 transition, and not one person mentioned that we had 3 years of COVID in there. So yeah, things dropped. That was a stressful time. But yes, so yes, things didn't happen that we really had goals to do. And I really appreciate Chris, you saying, can we just hope that in 1 year, we're at least where we are right now? Wouldn't it be amazing if we were better off? But just to get where we are right now with a budget that's managing with staff that are here and committed and programming is pretty miraculous as it is. It would be amazing if we could be here right now. So yes, did you want to?
I just wanted to add, I had 5 stars around it, but didn't end up saying it. And I think the point of that is what we saw up there in the numbers is that we've also lost to last year $857,000 of state funding, if I read that correctly.
Mhm.
So when you start looking at costs like, oh, you know, it's going to go up by 1.5 million, which is just our default. Also add on the cost of the taxpayers of that $857,000 of state funding, which now goes from the state to the local taxpayers. So that's why, in essence, that's why last time when we cut our budget, everyone's taxes went up. That will continue until the funding models change. So that's a very real number that you can see this year will make people's taxes go up by about $900,000, you know, across between the two towns. And that's just to, you know, people say the taxes have to come from somewhere. That's true. More and more of them are coming from local property taxes rather than the state. And there are other sources that the state has for money. I've read comments from legislators. The legislators there, they do have the money. They admit in their comments that they could do it. They are not. So that's a very real number that we can look at and say, okay, you know, not only do we have our increases, we have to make up for this almost $900,000 of funding. By the way, that's been going on every year. That's a big reason why you're seeing tax increases. Like they're going up much higher than anyone here wants them to. So yeah, it's kind of sad for me to say, like, I just hope, because I really joined the board to like improve things. Seeing the reality of things, I've kind of, you know, adjusted my perspective, and it would be really good if we could get back to where we're at right now and then have something to build on.
And I would like to, did you raise your hand, Judy?
No, I'm
Getting more on
listening.
I would like to also just throw in real quick. I have brought the last Abbey Group report because I was armed for bear. Like we're talking food service tonight. I know those numbers are gonna be off the charts. I don't know quite how you possibly have kept food service from the increases or how the Abbey Group did that. But wow, I mean, that was the one area I thought we have no control over how much food costs right now
Mhm.
and transportation for that. Like that is so out of the realm of any kind of reality I thought would be happening. So I don't know how that happened. I'm going to simply say thank you. And thank you especially to the Abbey Group, because that's phenomenal. Yes.
I'm just curious, we don't throw out food, do we? I mean, do we save it for the next day, or is it a case of if it's made that one day and we serve it and what doesn't get served gets thrown out? Like, is there a lot of waste? That's
Good question.
I think the food that they have left over in the kitchen, or, you know, yes, they'll reuse that or repurpose it and put it into a different dish or meal or something like that. Sometimes at the end of the lunch period, they're able to I know that at the elementary schools anyway, when I've been there during lunch, that they've been able to go back and get seconds at times.
Okay.
And then the older kids anyway. And then I do waste. Yeah, there's waste because we have 20 or 25 minutes or 30 minutes of lunch, and kids talk, and sometimes they're not interested in the food. And so yes, it gets disposed of that way. So we're
Yeah,
not keeping
yeah.
the food that's on the kids'
right,
trays.
but stuff that's still in the kitchen,
Yes,
good. Okay,
yeah.
thank you.
Yeah, per whatever USDA and OSHA, you
Great.
know, they're highly regulated.
Yep, okay, awesome, thank you.
All right, any further board comment? Okay. At this time, what I'd like to do is open up the public comment, but then I would like to see if the board is amenable to a consent agenda change to have Dante speak after the board comment, after the public comment. So we'll move your student representative report. Welcome, Dante. Thank you for coming. If you, let's listen to the public comments and then we'll do the student report and then a consent agenda. Is that cool with people? Okay. So public comment, we'll put the policy up on the back of your agendas at your seats. You'll see our norms. And please do read those. And yeah. I think you guys, I'm looking at the audience, I think you guys know the drill. Anybody who wishes to speak, you do need to use the microphone. It's not an option. Does not amplify your voice. It makes it hearable for our online community. Okay, and then once we have some people in the public speaking, then we'll go to an online thing and then go back. Okay, thank you. Please state your name and whether you live in Ringe or Jaffrey.
Pat Martin from Ringe. I thought it was very appropriate to congratulate Representative John Hunt because at the League of Women Voters presentation, where all the legislators came to speak, John at the end said that he had supported SWEPT. And when SWEPT was in full force, we actually did see our taxes go down. And at the end of the meeting, he promised that there would be legislation this year. So I think, given his honor, we should really push that issue and ask that, I see the problem as the state not properly funding us and, equitably across the state. And so I'd really like to see us continue to push on that. Although I thought all the points you made, the warrant articles, everything made sense. I too am heartbroken about the idea of selling a property because I think electricity prices are going to go through the roof and we're going to wish that we had some kind of large community solar project to generate revenue for the school district. Thank you.
Sheila Nagel from Jaffrey. All right, I'm here tonight because I feel like I've been harassed and discriminated by the administration at Kona High School. I did not agree with the budget last year, along with a very large group of people. People asked me if I'd speak up because they were afraid of being retaliated against. So there were staff members, community members, and parents alike that all came to the consensus that since my children are homeschooled or go to prep school, that there would be nothing that could happen to me. Boy, they were wrong. Senior night for the boys basketball team was on Valentine's Day, February 14th. I received a letter of discipline at the end of April, in the beginning of May. I appealed it right away for the first week of May.
This is not appropriate.
Sheila, we have to stop.
I've written numerous letters.
Yep. Sheila,
I've
I'm
had-
sorry, this is not appropriate for public comment.
Then can I have a private session, please?
We can definitely schedule a private session. We
Because
will
I've
talk
been
as
not,
a board
can
to
it
see
be
if
prompt
that-
because basketball season
appropriate.
starts? And I've been asking since the beginning of May.
And you have had responses from the board numerous times, Sheila.
I've been
This is not
ignored.
appropriate at this time.
So when can my meeting be set? The season's about to start.
This is not appropriate right now. Is there another public comment?
It's
on the
been months.
agenda?
Lisa?
Yeah.
Lisa?
Can the board vote on it right now?
I don't want to vote. I just want to make a comment because I'm new to this and I've been in the middle of it.
Judy, right now, we need to stop that portion of it. Thank you.
But the board can vote to hear me right now.
No, we're sticking with the agenda. Thank you.
Can the board vote? How can you have the Senate?
Sheila, we're gonna stick with the agenda. Thank you. Get a name and town, please.
Carlene Walter from Ringe. I appreciate your presentation tonight, and I like the fact to hear that you guys are thinking about reality of where the community is financially, in our own personal finances too. So, as Chris pointed out, a third of the budget is going to be this healthcare thing. That's reality for a lot of us as well too. So I just appreciate that you are looking at alternatives. And I know I think sports are a very important part of a school community. And I think open enrollment is going to be the future for, the landscape of what the educational field is going to be. And people are going to have choices. So putting your efforts into making this the best school that you can academically is very important to this community. I have grandkids who are going to be entering the school system. One question I had was on the preschool. I like the fact that you're thinking about that as a warrant article. I've been in education field myself. I know preschool does help. I've actually been a preschool teacher in Massachusetts for a couple of years. And have you considered having people pay to use that, not just have it be a fully funded? I don't know if you can make that part of the warrant article. It's just a suggestion. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone? Yeah.
Nick Hill, Jaffrey. Following the last, I'm gonna read this because I couldn't articulate it. Following the last meeting, I took time to review the materials presented, and they were presented again tonight. One area that particularly stood out in Ruben's report, specifically the early indications of a $1.5 million increase attributed to the three factors. I believe it would be in the board's best interest to further examine the health insurance component of this increase. A closer review would not only demonstrate fiscal responsibility, but also reassure the public that the board is making every effort to identify potential cost-saving measures. As outlined by Ruben, the $1.5 million increase reflects adjustments related to teacher contracts, rising health insurance, and the outstanding health insurance assessment of approximately it was 400 the previous meeting, but it was 485 tonight. That leaves roughly 1.1 million associated with the contractual and health insurance increases, both significant figures that warrant careful consideration. At the previous meeting, the board agreed to investigate the assessment further and to request detailed breakdown from school care regarding the methodology used to determine the amount. In addition to that inquiry, has the board or superintendent considered exploring alternative health insurance options for the district? For instance, evaluating different plan structures, deductible levels, or other coverage configurations that might help identify opportunities to contain cost without compromising quality of coverage. Given my background in the insurance industry, I understand that rate increases are becoming more prevalent. However, there are often strategies to help mitigate their impact. May I ask whether teachers currently contribute toward their health insurance premiums? Do we know? Here, they do. All right. If so, where there might be room to adjust contribution levels in a fair and balanced manner to help offset a portion of the increased expense? These questions are offered to you in full respect of our educators and the value of their benefits, as well as an appreciation for the board's ongoing efforts to balance fiscal stewardship, transparency, and fairness within the budgeting process.
Hi, Kevin Hampsey, actually business owner too, from Hampsey, Rainier Associates, longtime resident. It's been a long time since I sat through a school board meeting and stuff. And I agree with Pat, might have left, about John Hunt and stuff, and trying to talk to him and massage that as far as trying to see what he can do to go to bat for us. Chris is absolutely right. Part of the problem is the state taking money away from the towns. It's just going to keep raising the cost for our taxes, and we're getting less and less and less. And I think I agree with board member Chris Ratcliffe, I believe, and John about sports being a big thing. I think it should be an automatic. It shouldn't be something that should be voted. Sports, the arts, that should be in there. And I don't know about the pre-K. Sounds like it's more for the employees. Yeah, it was never there when I went to school here back in the day. I'm not saying against it, but I think the art, the entertainment, and I think somebody mentioned about not having a theater. We got the new Park Theater. I think that should be used more and more. I know a band director who I have a lot of respect for has used it in the past. I think it needs to be used more and more for concerts, for sound, obviously for events like that. It only enhances that. I was brought aware of Sheila's situation, and I know as a parent and a basketball coach for many, many years, coaching kids, it's important for me to see my kids, whether they play in sports or band. I wish something could be worked out or discussed with sports starting up. I've been to basketball games where we've had current employees for the town, fire chiefs, whatever, where I've seen them act and their behavior hasn't been great, and they weren't not allowed to go to a game the next year. So let's, in a world of ice and everything like that, let's just try to be fair with people and stuff. That's what I want. But I like what you guys are doing, and it's tough with the state keeps taking money away from us, and I applaud what you guys are doing. So thanks.
Thank you, Ken. All right, do we have anybody online?
No one just raised their hand.
Okay, keep an eye on that. Anybody else in person?
Oh, sorry. Allison Marr from Rinch, New Hampshire. I just have a clarifying question that I know that some people had asked. If we were to put pre-K and sports as petition warrant articles and they were voted down, does that mean the following year, could the board and administration choose to put them back in the proposed? Is that still an option?
I can answer
Yes, please.
several questions if you'd like. So yes. And careful consideration would have to go to wording. Because the warrant articles, no does mean no, but so that certainly there's risk, but we're in a tumultuous time of finances any way you cut it. And I think sometimes giving people some agency, some choice in how to vote and to see it a little more clearly, and to be able to say, yeah, I want my money going toward that. There will be people who will vote for the budget and say, yeah, I want that, and not want that, and vice versa. I think that's important, and I think it's important for some, perhaps even for healing. Relative to the healthcare, I know that a few of us have a meeting scheduled with a group, not Health Trust or Cigna, on the 25th to look at other options. Of course, anything, it's data collection at this point in time because our current plans are within our collective bargaining agreements, so there would be a lot more work that would have to be done. I will say that the teachers and support staff, administrators, pay their share as either 15 or 20%, depending on the plan that they have. That is something we were able to keep through the negotiations many years ago. I think Charlie, myself, one other person was on some negotiations, and at that point in time, we were able to save a lot of money and be able to increase the funding for our teachers through the salary scale at that time. So it was a win-win situation for all for many years. In recent years, it doesn't matter what plan they've just been going up like crazy. We've actually had the lower increases over the last 4 years since COVID, but then again, we're paying for it now, right? With this added $500,000 plus expense that came out over was evidently created over a period of 2 years that we were not provided information on. That's troublesome. So certainly we've talked to our attorney, we've talked about what our options are. They have the legal right to be asking this, but there are still other groups that we can of individuals who are in the same boat as us, and we're continuing to have conversations about what we can do. If not to push back, at least prevent things from happening in the future. But I think part of our duty is to explore other options. In New Hampshire, there aren't a lot of other options for this type of insurance, you know, with these groups. So it's tough, but we have found some other, we have found another entity to talk to. I don't know if there were other questions. Those are the ones I could answer. Yeah. No.
Okay. All right, so before we move on to the consent agenda. Welcome. Good to see you, Dante. Would you please give us any kind of an update you have for student body?
Well, I'd like to shift it from more of a report from myself and to more of a comment on the presentation from earlier.
Yeah.
I think that the whole magnet school idea or the open enrollment opportunity could be like very, very good for our school. And I think I personally, and I know a few other students that probably would agree, that I would like to see more AP classes introduced. I know that we had AP seminar introduced this year, and I've heard that the engagement in that is pretty good. And I'm personally taking APUSH and AP Lang this year, and there was a large amount of students, like newer students, who decided to sign up for both of those classes. And I think more AP classes would be more beneficial. I know this is a little naive of me because I'm younger and I'm not a taxpayer, but more opportunities like that would be really good for our school.
Thank you. All right. In the consent agenda, we have manifests, as Ruben's going to show. Payroll to recognize. We have donations. Could you tell us a little bit about the Community Center of Jaffrey for field trips donations? Ruben, do you have any information on those?
I do have a little bit. People got this earlier today. So we were able to put it on here, but basically the Community Center of Jaffrey led the conversation led by Owen Houghton. I think he's been here several times. The community knows Owen. Reached out to Jaffrey Grade School and asked what they could do, basically give them the information, like what would you normally spend for field trips? What are you missing? And so Deanna did a great job putting together an extensive list with the finances. The community center said, I think we can handle some of that. And so these are 3 grade levels that they'd like to supply these dollar amounts for a grade 3, a grade 4, and a grade 5 field trip.
Very cool. Very cool.
Which includes, biggest cost in field trips is transportation.
Then we have a slew of nominations for athletics. Thank you people for stepping forward. And we have the stipend list as well. Is there a motion to accept the consent agenda as written?
Motion to accept.
Thank you, Judy. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Sandy. All in favor, say aye. Opposed, abstain, passes 700. We have the minutes from our November 3rd meeting. Let's take a look. Okay.
Accept the minutes as written.
You motioned to accept the minutes. Thank you, Charlie. Is there a second? I'll second. Thank you, Christine. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? That's a 700. All right. Action items. Timely audit firm approval. I'll select this a little bit.
Yes, so we annually have an audit done of how we do business here. our finances. And it's quite an ordeal. It's exciting every year. And it's very stressful, but we get everything put together and our audit findings have been very good since I've been here, and I believe actually since before that as well. It was a common occurrence that audits were done, which is good. Not every location has done audits all the time, and it has been highlighted recently due to some challenges within the state. I think there actually is some legislative language out there this year that would be a little actually too restrictive, but is pushing school districts to have their annual audits done within a specific time frame. That would be tough for, since we're all using the same audit firms, to be able to do it all in that time frame. But nonetheless, it is important to make sure that we are transparent and also doing everything correctly. So we have an opportunity to sign an agreement with our audit firm, which is Plotzik and Sanderson. We have used them this time. They do not give us the same people, the same group each time. They change that around. And the costs are, like anything else, are going up. I wouldn't say they're too extravagant. I asked Carrie to put the historic costs in for this to show you where we have been. So we used to actually pay in 2014 before I came, 2015 and 2016, we used to pay more for our audits because of some efficiencies that Carrie and her team have made. We were able to renegotiate that and get a lesser cost annually, but we are now 10 years later up to that spot where we're going to start increasing to that cost for an audit. It is, you know, it's something we have to budget for, but it's worth making sure that we're doing everything right and then taking the feedback if we need it. So the request to award, well, let's see, the action that we're requesting would be that the Jaffrey Ridge School Board award a 3-year contract to Plotzik and Sanderson, PA, for the auditing of the full years ending June 30th, 2026, 27, and 28, and further authorize the superintendent to execute the contract.
Is there a motion for this?
I so move.
Thank you, Sandy. There's a second?
Second.
Thank you, John. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Abstain, passes 700. Thank you, Carrie, for that work. All right, and what is Reaching Higher New Hampshire Key Communities Initiative, please?
I'd like to speak to that.
Thank you, John.
A request was made by one of the co-chairs of the Working Together Jaffrey Ridge that the board consider participating with Working Higher New Hampshire. Reaching Higher, thank you. So they have a group of key communities. It's a statewide organization that looks to amplify the voices of school districts throughout the state so that the legislature will hear what our concerns are, what our realities are, and how their policies are affecting us. I think we all received an email about this. There was a link in there to Reaching Higher New Hampshire, and we've been asked if we would consider becoming a key community, which means that we would involve ourselves in a dialogue with Reaching Higher to try to provide information about how state policies are impacting our children.
Are you requesting an action with this, or is this an information?
Yes, I'm requesting that we make a decision on agreeing to become a key community.
Would it be okay to, since there's no link attached here, I don't see the information. Is it okay if we table this until Saturday's meeting and get the?
Yeah, there actually should be a link, but that is fine. I think it's probably a good idea. It's not something we want to just, read right now. It's a fairly brief description of what the key communities are and what we're asked to do. And so tabling it till Saturday would be fine. There should be a link in the email that was sent, I believe it was by Alicia Stenson.
There is.
All right, so let's table this and then come back to it on Saturday. And if in the agenda for Saturday, that could be included as an action item with the link. Is that okay? Thank you. All right. And CMHS going to Montreal.
So this was in my queue recently, and I approved it going forward. I think it's important to talk about some costs as we look at expected transportation costs, and all the costs are placed upon the learners who would be in attendance of this. There is a cost that is not included in here that was bargained in the JREA contract for teachers who are taking their learners to trips overnight, that there is further compensation for that, just so you're aware of that. So if they're talking about 2 chaperones, that would, depending on if the chaperones are both employees, then covered by that contract, then that would be something that we would need to take into consideration.
Judy?
Am I reading it correctly that it's the expected per learner cost is $1,095?
That is how I took it.
Yeah,
But I'm also reading it again and wanting to make sure that's the case. You see.
I mean,
While you're looking
Yep.
at that, if I could also add a different question, lodging at the last sentences, lodging will be in a vetted hostel in Montreal. We'll probably rent out most of the hostel to accompany our group. I'm not comfortable with our students staying overnight in a place where people who are not part of our group are also sleeping. That's not something that I am comfortable saying, yes, let's go for this. If this could be relooked at with a different housing arrangement, I would like that.
I have another huge reservation with the political climate right now that Homeland Security is snatching people unexpectedly. And there was a case of a gentleman from Peterborough who was stopped at the border and detained for a long period of time. Just completely surprising to everyone. I am really not comfortable with having our learners go outside the country. It's just my own personal, as a mom, I am just afraid of what if by some terrible chance one of the students or a teacher gets detained. We have no power to do anything about that. So that's just something when I first read it that just kind of scared me. Along with what you said about sleeping in a hostel with people that aren't related to our trip. Those two things just bothered me.
Yes, John, go ahead.
I think these are very, reasonable concerns. But I think we should look at them and see what the solutions are, if any. I recall that there was a trip to Montreal. It was a class trip conducted at the end of the year. About maybe 6 or 7 years ago, maybe a little longer. But one of the ways they addressed it was by having chaperones on each floor outside of each room, and there were volunteers who agreed to stay awake all night and have one on each floor. And the administration at the time had very similar questions to the ones being raised, and they looked at the proposed solution and thought it was adequate. So I think that that's something to consider.
All right, would the board be okay if we tabled this one as well, to get more information?
Is
Alright.
this the cost? Are the students paying this or is the school district paying this?
Students,
Okay, so.
I
we
believe
still-
it is cost per pupil.
Yeah, this is very similar cost to what
Mhm.
like the Washington DC trip is. And I will note that they're not doing that this year just because of lack of interest that was canceled this year, and then maybe hopefully like combine it. I don't know, maybe this will fill a gap for those people, but I imagine that the cost is a big issue for most people that are choosing not to participate.
But the cost for the district will be the busing and the paying of the teacher.
Zero.
They're
just the
putting
paying of the
the
teacher.
cost of the transportation onto the students.
Okay.
So yeah, if we could simply get more information. We'll relook at the hospital on here, would be great. All right,
It almost seems as if there's not a big group that maybe an Airbnb would actually might be safer there. So
let's see what they can come up with. All right, discussion items.
So I guess I know it's late and I apologize, but I do feel like as a board, we have to discuss the future of CTE and our role in Region 14, career and technical education. It is unfortunate that our construction trades annex is outdated and is so small that we could not run the type of program that we would like to run. And voters voted down the addition, and then we lost our teacher. And so now we don't have a program. And when we ran the ad for a new teacher, not a single person applied, no one clicked on the, no one even viewed the ad. Other schools were successful in hiring construction trade teachers. We were not. Right now our kids are going to Keene. I understand that they have a fantastic facility where kids can actually build a modular home. That's the type of program we wanted our kids to have here. That's in the past. Now we're spending money to send them away. Not exactly being a magnet. I would like us to work with administration to see how we can continue to offer CTE in the future. I understand it's not going to be in this upcoming budget cycle. It may not be construction trades. Apparently, our community does not support that adequately. But if there's another career and technical program that we could offer, I would really like to look into that and see what our students would be interested in and what it would cost to run that program. Christine, say the program you were thinking. Public safety. Thank you. When we ran the,
I was excited about this.
when the administration sent out a survey in 2023, asking learners what program, construction, career and technical education program they're most interested in taking. Actually, public safety had a higher percentage of students saying they're interested in it than in construction trades. Shocking. We also had the support of the state police in that program. The fire chief was interested, although I don't think we're going to pursue the fire school component. And right now,
They wouldn't support it.
the states didn't support it. Our learners who are interested in becoming EMTs have to go to Keene, and that is a popular program. They don't always get in, and it ends up being expensive for us for transportation, and then we have to pay Keene. And so this would also be a possible revenue source for us because I'm sure there are students, Conval used to offer this program, they no longer offer it. So I'm sure there's students in Peterborough who would be interested in public safety, maybe the scenic. Those are, that's our region. Our region 14 construction, career and technical education is Conval, scenic, and Conant. And so we would get a revenue if students came in through those schools, and we certainly would save expenses by sending students out. And I believe that I'm a big proponent of AP classes. I think they're fantastic, but I also believe that we have many students in our district who may not be interested in AP classes, and we need to support them.
That's my note. Thank you. Thank you. Christine and I had talked about this week when we were talking about being worried about the construction trades, alternative options, and continue worrying that. And then Christine mentioned this, and honestly, I don't know if it's possible. I hadn't felt even a flicker of hope until you said that. The idea that we could, if that was manageable, if we could use that space for something like that. I don't know if it's
Yeah, I don't-
it's not manageable. That was very exciting.
And I don't mean to dictate what our administration could do, but I would like us to look into it.
I think it's a great idea, and I do think we should be very cautious about giving up on career and technical education. If public safety does have that much interest behind it, then perhaps the venue we currently have for construction trades can be remodeled. And there also have been suggestions made that there are other facilities in the town that we could look at. Facilities that would cost us a lot less money, that wouldn't be as wonderful as the plan that we had on the table last March, but it could allow us to do something important.
All right. Any further discussion items? Judy?
I want to plan a way to talk to Sheila one-on-one with the board and please settle her problem, because life is too short, and God forbid something happens to your child and you miss their basketball game. All of us are parents. There clearly was a big bad thing that happened before I met any of you, but God forbid your child suffers a misfortune or something happens and you missed their game. It's not cool, and it's really petty. So can we be big people and just settle it?
Judy?
I'm telling you, you're a mom. And also I will come forward and also say that among the first people I met in this town, a person who will remain anonymous suffered a terrible medical misfortune and wasn't able to play basketball. And it just didn't,
Judy,
remember
we
that.
cannot mention.
We need to settle it, not
Here's the
say
thing.
names, but we've got to settle it.
Here's the thing. We have very strict rules about discussing individual students, individual people, individual staff. It's very strict for a reason.
Mhm.
We need to keep this to non-public sessions.
Well, then we've got to schedule it.
Okay. Then we will discuss that as a board. All right, we are ready for our next public comments, and please take that reminder that's going to be on the screen in a second very seriously. We have very strict regulations and by RSAs, by laws, about any conversations. If you look at number 3, it's extremely important that we follow these rules. Number 3 and number 4, very, very important to follow. In the interest of preserving individual privacy and due process rights, the board requires that comments, including complaints regarding individual employees, individual students, be directed to the superintendent in accordance with the compliance grievance resolution processes set forth in the policies. In public session, the board will not hear personal complaints of school personnel, nor complaints against any person connected with the school system. Other channels are provided for board consideration and disposition of legitimate complaints from school personnel or involving individuals, and they should be referred for appropriate action. I will say that in the situation before us, that the appropriate action has been taken. Now, we can always continue conversations, but they have to be non-public. They cannot be full board public presentations. Okay, bar none. Bar none. So, are there any further public comments on the agenda? Did anybody come forward on the online? All right. Our next meeting is Saturday. We have 2 Saturday meetings. Saturday, this coming Saturday, and then in 2 weeks from there, I believe.
The 6th.
December 6th is another Saturday, 9:30 morning meeting. These are long meetings. The budget meetings always are. We really thank everybody for staying with us through this process. And we are on to our next board matters. We have a policy meeting on December 4th coming up. Our fall policy updates have come forward, and there's not too many just yet, but there's ones that we need to deal with. And I would like to just bring up the student classroom sizes. That's going to be something we want to take a look at. Chris?
Yeah, and I will say that upon reading that, the interesting thing that the real reason to do that is kind of related to open enrollment, but for EFAs, and something that I was interested to learn is that for an EFA student, right, can request to enroll in for any course or extracurricular activity at any school in the state. Is the way I read it. It doesn't matter if they live in the community. So I think it's important. I think the purpose of the policy was just to set rules around that because, well, we're not required to charge EFA students. We could, and it's just, I think it'll be an important discussion, just to kind of regulate that. Again, we're moving more and more to school choice, whether we want to or not. So having the policies in place is just a smart thing to do. So.
Have there been any other committee meetings?
Facilities met today. The facilities are being well managed right now, even though we don't have a facilities director, but it is taking a lot of time with people who have a lot of other work to do. We heard about at RMS, some ramps are being replaced and finished. The ramp to the basketball court has finally been fixed. Ramps at our RMS to the historic front of the building and handrails are being replaced to be more ADA compliant. Working on flooring at JGS. Getting some quotes for windows at JGS and RMS. Still working on the idea of fixing up the track and looking at prices for mats for the track. And if we can actually store them so that they'll last longer. We're going after, as we were talking earlier, about some grants and how important it is to have a strong business office to go after these grants. We are going after another round of safety grants. We received funding for the first and second rounds, I think. And now this
Fourth round now.
fourth round, and this would, we hope would help pay for some locks that need to be replaced at JGS. And would you like to update us on the lead testing at RMS?
Sure. Yeah. So during this new governor, his time as governor, there was legislation passed to have lead testing at schools, and there were 3 years or 3 rounds of that, and we did all that we needed to there. This last round of testing showed that some faucets at RMS in the kitchen area had unacceptable levels. So the use of those was stopped. They were used to like wash vegetables, fruit, things of that nature. And so we've done worked with the state to do some remediation work. It's been largely successful. There are still a couple of sinks that are not quite at the levels that we need them to be, but we had put, I think, also phosphate in the pipes, and we need that to run through and take its time. So we are going to do some gradual running of the water over in that specific area of the kitchen to allow the substance to do what it needs to do for those pipes. If that, then we test in February with the state. If that does what we think it will do and what they think is certainly feasible or plausible, sorry, then we'll be in good shape that way. Otherwise, if not, then we have to think of a different route to take, maybe with pipes. So for that specific area, it's a very isolated area. Generally speaking, if we're going to talk about all the schools, all of our, anything that is not supposed to be consumed, where water is not supposed to be consumed, they're labeled that way, not to use, that have little tags on them. But we have the water bottle filling stations with the filters in all of the buildings, and we actually have a request over at Jaffrey Grade School to add another one of those. I think a parent group is interested in helping to install that. We're looking into that. The location that they suggested may not be the best location for us, but we certainly want to see what we can do. And all those stations pass with flying colors.
I'm just curious, do you do comprehensive water tests? Because I know my well has too much manganese and to the levels that it's dangerous. So do you check all the levels of everything in the water?
I don't.
Yes.
The town does.
The town does? Okay.
Well, manganese is tested by the water store. We have a private contractor that does that, and we have
Over at Ranch.
in
Yes.
Yes, and it's treated, water is treated.
Good.
From standard.
There's no further board matters? Was
Just
there any other?
want to mention that, and I won't go into detail, but there are a number of facilities issues that are long-term issues, and they're expensive, and things that we haven't really dealt with because there are other priorities. For example, the JGS parking lot is an expensive fix. And the reason for that, we know the reason, let's say, but we have put off fixing that. We're also looking at drainage issues in Ringe Memorial School parking lot. And we've been working on that for several years. There's no current problem because the rains have not been extensive this year. Last year, we had some flooding, and we're looking at how we can address that. And I say flooding of the boiler room, where we have a new boiler, and this is something that's been going on for a long time. And we hope to address it. We're trying to address it without spending another $750,000, which is the kind of money that we've been, spoken about. And we do have, and it's the last thing I'll say, we have a big upgrade to our heating, ventilation, and air conditioning systems. Happened over the past 5 years, starting in 2020. And we're pretty happy with the result, but we're also trying to keep on top of what the maintenance issues are and whether there are any details that still have to be, addressed with any final details. So there's a lot, and Carrie and Ruben and Kristen Testagrossa have been very involved in trying to keep on top of that.
Thank you.
And our facilities and grounds team is top notch, so they're great. Relative just quickly to the conversation that we had about the Route 202 property, we did have in 2016, a survey done of the land or prepared. At that time, they indicated that the combined lot was valued at 190,000. And that was, I don't remember the exact amount we spent, but it was more than that. So I remember it being worth less than when they purchased it originally. But certainly, I believe the 800,000, if that was an accurate number, would be about 2.5 to 3 times what it was paid for.
If the board will allow, Carrie, could you speak to that? But you need the microphone. Carrie's raising her hand, that's why I'm asking.
Oh, yeah.
Hmm?
I'm okay.
I just wanted to share that I looked, paid for it, and we paid $325,000 for that property.
Purchased that property for $325,000. Yeah.
$325,000 in 1990.
Yeah.
2016, it went down that much.
No.
It's crazy. Okay, all right, I think we are ready to adjourn. We're gonna have our non-public on Saturday morning at 9 o'clock. And so we will take a motion to adjourn.
I will make that motion.
Thank you, Christine, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Sandy, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, 700. Sheila, if you have a minute, I would love to have a minute with you. Judy?